This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Views expressed by hosts, guests, or employees are their own and do not necessarily represent ATS or its affiliates. Mention of any company, product, or service is not an endorsement. While ATS and its sister companies share corporate ties, they operate independently. ATS is not responsible for the accuracy or content statements made. For questions, visit atsinc.com.
Welcome to Beyond the Road, the ATS podcast. I'm your host, Holly, for today, and we have our guest here with us.
Sam Martis, the site supervisor.
Liaison,
yes.
Liaison.
I forgot about the liaison part.
That's the most important part, Sam. All right, so Sam is here today to talk a little bit about what he does, and we're going to talk through its importance for the customer side of the business and a little bit, because you kind of balance both worlds. You work with the driver side, you work with the customer side. You've had a ton of experience over the years, 24?
Somewhere around at
24
yes.
years, just at ATS. Any prior transportation experience before that?
My own business, my own trucking company.
So he knows what he's talking about.
Grew up with trucks. My granddaddy had trucks.
Yeah. So why don't we get started and just give a brief description of what you are up to nowadays?
What I am doing today, or have been for the last 4 or 5 years now, is I am in charge of all of our job site supervisors. On all of our wind projects, there is a site supervisor. They are contract labor, 1099 labor, that they're not company employees, but it is my job to train them of all of our policies, our procedures, make sure they're trained on safety, and send them to a job site. They are basically a liaison between our customer, our drivers, and the civil crew, offload crew of every job site. And part of my job, I go visit every job site we have every year. So I do a lot of traveling.
Yeah, I can imagine. You keep all of our trucks busy, and I'm sure our drivers appreciate that. So what all goes into the site, like the supervision part and also the pre-planning that happens in order for you to make the magic happen when the move is actually active?
Okay, well, as far as the pre-planning, that is mostly through the office. Once I get wind of a project coming up, that's when I start picking out one of my supervisors. I try to pick a supervisor that would be best fit for that customer or that particular job site. We have them on the destination side, and we also have them on the origin side. So, some of our supervisors are a better fit for the origin, the loadout side, and than they are the destination side. So I always just pick out which one I like best for that customer or that job site.
You're like a matchmaker for site supervisors.
Right. Some of them some of them work really good with some customers and not so good with the others.
Sure.
So I have to get to know how they work.
Yeah. All the strengths and weaknesses and be
Correct.
able to.
Once we get to the job site, their job title changes there to their civil engineer. We check all of the roads, all the turn radiuses, anything that would stop our truck from delivering on time, stuff like that.
Sure.
So once they clear all the roads and make sure everything's ready for us, that's when our trucks start delivering.
Sure. Can you talk a little bit more about the customer side of that process and how that works to get all the information you need, what that interaction looks like?
All the customers talk to our project managers in the office. Our project managers gather the information that I need for my supervisors.
So what makes life easier on the customer side for us to do our due diligence so that the project runs smoothly?
As long as we're communication between our customers and a job site supervisor, they love for us to have a supervisor there, because now they're not getting 40 phone calls from dispatchers and drivers and stuff like that. They go through one person to go through the schedule of the drivers and let them know when the driver's arriving, let them know if the driver's having issues or are going to be delayed. It just makes the project so much smoother.
Yeah. I know we've been doing this a long time. I think ATS got into the wind farm game back in the early 2000s when it really started to kick off. And you've been here kind of since the beginning of all that, the forefront. So What do we do now that we've had so much experience? What are we looking out for that can go wrong during those moves that we're proactively planning for to try and reduce the amount of downtime we might see?
One of the best things that we're doing now for our customers is doing pre-planning of our routes.
Sure.
Literally drive the route from point A to point B prior to any truck even loading, and just to make sure we can make each turn, make sure there's no vertical rises in the road that will cause damage to the bottom of the wind tower or anything like that. We have gotten very, very proactive at that, and our customers absolutely love it because now they know that there's not going to be an issue between point A to point B.
Do you think there's a lot of educational support, I suppose, needed to make sure that the customers really understand what transportation companies need to do to make a move successful? Is it a lot of teaching them what to expect, or how much knowledge do they come in initially, like understanding the side of moving that freight?
Yeah. Well, once because we send them reports. We
Sure.
let them know what we're going to do prior to moving anything.
Okay.
And a lot of the other companies do not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We are the number one carrier for pre-planning that I know of.
Sure.
A lot of the companies, they don't go through the route, checking the routes first. They'll get a permit and go for it.
That seems crazy to me. I just assumed everybody else did that too. So is that one of the reasons that you think that we own such a large market share of the wind movements?
I think it has a lot to do with it.
Sure. What else do you
Between that and having a supervisor on a job site or on the wind side, because it makes a big difference knowing when that component's going to arrive on that job site.
Sure.
And making sure that component gets delivered safely. And the driver gets off the job site so we can go reload.
So now, do you get much involved with the perimeter trailers and the trailer configurations like you did with our dual lane? And I'm referring back to, like, the audience doesn't know, but ATS used to have this big dual lane trailer that took up literally 2 lanes of traffic when this thing was going down the highway. And once upon a time, I would follow Sam and videotape this stuff. So it was really cool to see in person. You don't realize how massive these trailers are until you're, standing next to one in a yard somewhere. But
our perimeter trailers are basically a mini version of that.
They do. They look exactly the same, but just like you don't realize that it's smaller until you would like see one parked next to the other one, and you actually realize
Right.
the structure looks very similar, especially with the decks on.
Right.
So are you involved in much of that?
I am some. It kind of depends on how busy I am with the wind. If I don't have a lot to do with the wind energy at the time, I will go out and help the guys with the perimeter deck trailers. So it just kind of varies.
Sure.
Kind of like my job.
Yeah.
My job title, it varies.
Yeah, I was going to say jack of all trades, right? But master of all also.
Well, I don't know about that.
I won't call you a master of none. You're good at all of it. So what kind of a benefit do you think that has having someone in a role like yours at a trucking company on, first we'll talk about the customer side and then the driver's side. Like, how does having someone like you help the customer?
Every job site because every job site I go to, I always talk to one of the project managers for our customer, just to see how happy they are with my supervisor or our supervisor. And they all say the same thing. It's critical that we're there. It's critical that I check up on them, because we have had some issues in the past that I would need to kind of get between our project managers or their project manager and ours. So it's everybody needs a manager.
Sure.
They really do. And on ETS side, don't know anybody up there in the office that would want all 15 of our supervisors under their belt.
Yeah.
Everybody has a lot to do up there in the office.
Oh, yeah. No, you're pretty invaluable, so I'm happy that
I
we
don't know
could
about that part,
pick your brain today. I'm just buttering you up so you come back on another day, right?
Oh, okay.
A couple months from now.
Kind of like the coffee cup deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You're on to me. So what do you think, how does that help the drivers on the driver side of things to have a site project supervisor, like just even the supervisors themselves, and then you also involved in the process? How does that smooth things out for them?
The drivers, our supervisors and myself, we stay in contact with the drivers all the time. So the drivers they will know if the site is ready for them. Mm-hmm. They'll know when they'll approximately when they'll get unloaded and when they could get out of there too.
Sure.
So it's pretty important. They really liked having that resource that they can go to, that they can contact one of the supervisors and say, look, I'm going to be a little bit late, or I'm going to be a little bit early. Can I go in and get unloaded?
Yeah. That kind of main point of contact with all the reliable information about what's going on.
And in the past, before the supervisors, they didn't have that. They didn't have anybody there that they could contact, say, look, here I come, I need to get unloaded as fast as I can or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and that's always one of the biggest areas of strife with drivers, right, is inaccurate information, especially when it comes to loadout times or even just trying to converse with the customer and making sure that they have accurate information on where they're going when they're supposed to be there. So having you committed to the company as their resource, especially with those complicated freight moves with the project side, I'm sure is
correct. And
very beneficial.
Another part of the supervisor's job is reporting. We keep up time just in case there is detention time built up, whatever. So that they keep up with all the serial numbers of the components, of course, the drivers and their time when they arrive to the job site, when they get unloaded, when they leave the job site, and all that is put in a daily report sent to our project managers here in the office.
Sure.
So we can keep track.
With those and any other of the primary industries that we move that project size freight with, what are you kind of seeing out there? What are the drivers talking about? What are the customers saying about the state of each of those industries?
Right now, what I'm hearing from most everybody, including the office as well, things are kind of slow.
Yeah.
But things are just kind of leveling out for a little bit. Don't know if it's political because of the recent political change or what the deal is, but
a lot of variables.
There's always variables. And
Right.
It seems like to me every election year it kind of does the same thing over and over.
Yeah. That little bit of unease as, the shift happens and then everybody gets settled into the new normal.
Right.
And then see where it takes you from there.
Right.
So let's jump back to, so you originally started out in the industry as a pilot car driver, right?
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about that and what led you down the career path that you ended up taking.
I like I say, I began as a pilot car. We didn't have that many drivers then. I think there was 10 heavy haul drivers, somewhere around in there.
What year did you start at ATS?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember.
That long ago?
I think it was 2002.
Nice.
And so I only did the pilot car deal for like 2 years. Okay. And Matt Foyer, he was was a project manager at the time. I don't remember. I think he was the manager at the time. That's when we had like 2 site supervisors, and they was company guys. But we started having more and more job sites, so we needed more supervisors. So Matt asked me to become a site supervisor.
Sure.
I did that for, 8 years, something like that. And next thing I know, I was asked to be a project planner to start doing site reviews and, meeting with the customers, prior to a job site ever even starting. I did that for several years. And I think after that is when we bought the dual lane.
Oh, yeah.
So become the manager for the dual lane.
Yeah, I think they bought that like right before I started. And so that was like the big show pony at the time.
Right.
Like all the stuff was the TK360.
Right. And then once we sold the dual lane, that's when I moved into the role I'm in now.
Nice. So when it comes to like the project planning and all the experience that you have over the years and the various roles that you've held, what do you think are the most important things that the customers don't know about the planning process that they maybe should know about?
I don't really know as if our customers don't know anything that we do. We keep them pretty much informed.
Sure.
Of all the details,
or
as many of the details as we want them to know. Anyway.
Right. Or is there, I guess, when we have maybe a new customer that we haven't worked with before, what might they not be aware of that you wish more customers had more awareness of when they come on board to start shipping, especially the really large freight?
I think on a brand new customer, they're mostly kind of surprised, basically, about our pre-planning.
Oh, like how robust it is and actually what needs to go into it?
Correct.
Sure.
In fact, one of the guys that I worked with him quite a bit in the very beginning, and he was quite surprised. He was impressed how much we do,
Sure.
But prior to even thinking about loading the truck.
Yeah. I always think of the example. So we had a load that we just chased one time that we were filming, and all the intricacies that most people don't even think about. I'm sure heavy haul drivers do just because they're involved in that whole process and they are the ones who have to drive down these routes. But like all the small cables and even the traffic lights in town and like them trying to route around all this stuff, or having to have bucket trucks literally staged at every step along the way where there might be a highline wire that's hanging too low and they have to just be ready. So like it was the craziest experience because it was just like this train of, as we're cruising down the highway, like bucket truck after bucket truck with the cable lifted just so we could just keep moving.
And then all pilot car.
Yeah, and pilot cars. And so then it was just like this crazy, like perfectly like set up system because everybody was so well prepared. And so I was like, I never really thought about how many low-hanging cables there are out there. When you're driving around, you don't really notice them. And so I just imagine on the customer side, like the epiphany of like going down the road and realizing how many low-hanging cables are, and that every single one of those is going to have to get lifted for your thing to move 50 some miles down the road. Right. Even because it wasn't a very long trek for this load. And I remember at the end talking to the customer and them expressing frustration about the cost of the move, not because it was anything with like the transportation provider's fault or anything. It was just that they didn't think about transportation until the very end. So they were worried about building this thing. How big can we build it? Like, we want to get it to be one solid piece. They were so focused on getting it as big as they could that they didn't think about having to then move that thing once they got it built that size. And so they were just like, whatever it costs us to build it, it costs us the same amount to move it. And it was just like this afterthought. And I wondered how many customers out there have that, get themselves in that same situation where transportation might be an afterthought if it's not an industry that they're already really well versed in,
I promise you there's several of those.
You experience those from time to time?
I have seen places that we're supposed to go load at, and I wonder, why did you build a factory here?
Yeah,
because it's going to be near impossible to get here, or get out once we do get in there.
That's even like some towns you see like really tiny roundabouts put in there, and I'm just like, I wonder if that planner was thinking about semis. How are they going to get a flatbed or a van trailer through that little thing? And then some of them have it where you can just cruise up right over the curb.
Right.
And I'm like, they weren't really planning for a load that big to move through there.
Or a dual link.
How,
or 19 axle.
So you are often involved in the route planning process, or previously were. What all goes into that pre-planning?
It's literally step by step, wire by wire. You measure every wire. You measure every bridge. You measure every intersection that
so you're out there physically?
That you have to make a turn on. You literally physically measure every turn.
Wow. How long does it take to do one of those?
It varies. It really does. If it's on mostly 2-lane roads, it could take for a 300-mile trip from origin to destination. It could take 2 days just to do the route review.
Wow.
Just depending on the number of turns and number of wires.
Yeah, and just making sure that there's nothing to be weird along the way.
Correct.
I always liked reading the full description of the route and then seeing like low bridge, check height, and like all the little notes along the way, or small railroad tracks, watch, clearance height through there and stuff. And it's just all the little things that you don't really think about unless you're working, again, in the industry or the one having to drive through all these obstacles.
Right. Our engineering department is a wonderful tool as well for that routing, because they do the AutoCAD turns.
Oh, yeah.
And that makes a huge amount of difference, because we can almost say with certainty that we can make this turn.
Yeah.
There's always little variations, but
sure.
Yeah.
But no major surprises.
No.
If we're doing it right.
Right.
Yeah, there was I think there was a load that came through Duluth, and it was the longest blade that we had moved out of the harbor in like the longest time. think it was quite a few years ago now, but they went through like this old downtown area of Duluth, and it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen because we had one of our site supervisors there with a drone, and he caught it overhead, and you just see this blade tip cruise between and with the rear steer on the trailer, and you're like, there's no way that they can make that corner, and then you just watch it all happen, and they make the tightest little shift with this 72-meter blade, and it's just mind-blowing. I think there was even when I chased you behind the dual lane that one day, 2 little boys ride up on their bikes, and they're like, what's going on? Because they saw us sitting up with the camera, and we're like, well, see that big load right there across the road? He's going to come around this corner. And they're like, no way, no way. And I was like, yeah, they're going to come around the corner. And he's like, there's no way that's going to fit. And then he calls his buddy over. They're probably like 6 years old in this little town in southern Minnesota. And then he came cruised over, and then they sat there and waited for like that half hour while you guys unhooked the axles and made the corner.
Right.
And it was just the cutest thing. So I was just like watching their little minds be absolutely blown. And hey, it does it for adults too.
It does. Mine, even including mine every now and then.
Yeah.
We did what?
I know.
We made it.
Right?
Yeah.
Job security.
Right.
How much training do you do with the driver's side of things?
Driver's side, not a lot. We recently are redoing the our multi-axle class. I have been involved in that. So I may be doing some multi-axle training.
Sure.
Right now, we're just working on the driver's handbook and that part of it. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. A lot of exciting things happening.
Of course, I've been around these our multi-axle trailers since we first thought about them and changed over from a walking beam trailer to a nitrogen booster.
Oh. So what does that mean?
Well, walking beam trailer is where 2 groups of axles actually are connected by a beam, so they equalize constantly. A nitrogen booster is literally a nitrogen tank filled and with a hydraulic ram that equalizes between the trailer and the booster. So it's quite a bit different system than walking beam. We have to train the drivers on how to operate that system as well.
Sure.
But it's a better trailer, my opinion.
A little easier.
Updated.
So what has to go into place in order to train? I know a lot of the pilot car teams get trained in on how to operate because you have to have the driver actually in the truck moving this thing, and you have someone completely independently running a remote control to steer the back end of it.
Correct.
So what does it take to get them fully trained and ready to take something like that on?
Well, that's another part of where we kind of lead the industry in. All of our pilot cars that steer our tower trailers and our blade trailers, they have to be trained by ATS before they are allowed to be turned loose with the remote control, basically. Sure. And it's about a 3-day course. Macon Scarborough, he does the snobble training, which is tower training. Dave Wilson does the blade training. And I have done it in the past as well, so I still have that responsibility as well from time to time when one of those guys cannot do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I remember it was quite a few years ago, we were doing a huge wind move in Maui. Mm-hmm. I think it was Maui. And we had the entire Hawaiian team that was going to be running this stuff because they were going to have their own tractors and trailers and everything like based in Hawaii. We weren't shipping that stuff over. It was just the components. And so they actually flew them here to the yard and we videotaped them getting trained in. Right. So it was like the whole Hawaiian team here to learn how to steer these trailers and work with the drivers and the drivers to, practicing loops out in the parking lot, making sure they had clearance on all these roads. And
correct. And we had a Puerto Rico project back several years ago. We did the same thing. We brought the Puerto Rican drivers and pilot cars over here and did the same thing. They had to go through our training.
Is that pretty unique to the industry?
It is.
Yeah.
I know several people with working for other companies, they don't have the training courses. They said, there's a trailer, there's a road, figure it out. We don't
Sweet
do
Jesus.
That. We don't do that.
That stresses me out thinking about it. Those are the videos that you catch on, what's that trucking channel on YouTube? Bonehead Truckers. Yeah, that's where all those videos come into play.
Right.
Oh, Lord. Yeah. Yeah, over the road. We don't really feature a whole lot of mistakes on there because we're so awesome. So what kind of relationship is typically best suited for like a driver and a pilot car? Because there has to be a lot of trust there, right? With their,
They have to trust each other.
yeah. I mean, a driver can only see so far back on a mega load like that. And so they're relying completely on whoever their partner is steering the rear end of that, or even just helping guide them along these roads, because some of them can be pretty janky.
But a lot of the drivers have a lot of blind trust in our pilot cars because they may be meeting them for the first time, and for circumstances, maybe a new project. The driver may have a escort that he prefers, but he didn't get. So he has a new escort that he's never met before, but he trusts them because he knows that going through our training.
Sure. Yeah. So that builds definitely a level of trust, knowing that they're an ATS signed on pilot car and have gone through the proper training channels.
Correct.
To be on those types of loads.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that definitely helps a lot because,
Right.
You're moving very expensive equipment. You can't really afford much to go wrong.
And things, especially when we're really busy, things move around a lot. So, they may get 2 or 3 different pilot cars or steermen in one project. It just depends how busy we are.
Sure. Yeah. What is that? So pretty much all the loads that you're involved with, I'm assuming, include pilot cars?
I don't really have a whole lot to do with pilot cars anymore.
No, not too much?
Not too much. Other than on the job site, we look out for their safety as well. We make sure that they are following the rules of the job site and our policies as well.
Is anything moving on the perimeter trailers and like the large blade trailers, do those all require pilot cars?
They do.
Okay. How much does that impact like the customer side of things? Do they know when they have a load that's going to require that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So they're pretty well versed in that already.
It's part of the bid.
Okay.
Part of the bid package.
So they may not know initially, but they find out.
Yes.
They know that it's going to be part of whatever's required in order for it to move down the road safely.
Correct.
What's the most amount of pilot cars you've ever seen on one load? Or like even including, like, I should just say escorts in general, because some of it's police escorts in a lot of states.
Some of the biggest, of course, I've seen some pretty big loads going down the highway over the years, but when we had our dual lane, they would be up to 7 pilot cars. That's including police, bucket trucks. That's not including our steermen, because we had 2 steermen on that trailer, but they would be up to 7 other vehicles out there with us.
They let me push the button one time to bring down the hydraulics at the end when you guys moved into the yard. I was like, I can push the button. I felt like such a little kid. That was an exciting 3 a.m. experience.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, because you guys moved all times of the day, right?
Day and night.
So is that kind of, what are the regulations like in trying to deal with that from state to state?
Every state is different.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, especially on a big load like that, even our wind towers. Each state, they have their own set of rules. Some states, they prefer us to run at night, not during the day. In certain areas, certain towns, it just such a variation. For the dual lane, when we had the dual lane, they didn't want that trailer on the road during the day. It was all night moves.
Oh, interesting.
So we'd be running down a 2-lane road on the dual lane in the middle of the night.
Yeah, just in the cover of darkness, this massive thing going down someone's county road.
But it happens. It happens as well with our wind towers and our blades as well.
Okay.
California is one state also that's like that. They like night moves.
Sure. I suppose there's enough traffic on the road during the days that it just becomes a hindrance, and so
Correct.
They have to go when the streets are dead to make room for all those big loads to come through. Interesting. So what's the best way that a driver can stay up to date on all those types of regulations?
Each state has their own website. So it's literally go to DOT, whatever state you're in.
Yeah. And I think we even do a pretty good job of providing some resources to our drivers too, just to make sure that they know everything well, and then they get every route pre-planned if it's big enough.
I think we are definitely a leader in that kind of stuff. We keep our drivers in the know. I don't really know a lot about the driver's app itself, but I have been told a lot that they get a lot of information off that.
That's great. I think we've covered a ton of subjects today. But that's why I wanted to have you on, because you're so knowledgeable, and I appreciate it. So
Well, certainly.
Be sure to check out the Learning Center at driveforats.com for driver-specific tips, tools, and resources. And if you're a shipper, swing by the Learning Center, the Learning Hub at atsinc.com for content built just for you. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast right here on the Anderson Trucking Service channel, and check out our Over the Road YouTube channel for even more driver-focused videos. So thanks for listening, and as always, stay safe out there.